not like a scholarship. They are not able to hold you to row for 4 years. But what I can tell you is that that commitment that you gave that coach is going to reflect on Holly. It's going to reflect on RSR. It's going to reflect on your high school, and it's going to reflect on your high school rowing program. It's a very serious commitment as far as what you are offering them in exchange for their support in the admissions office. And again, it's not a shoe-in, but the fact that they're taking their time to help facilitate that, you want to take that very seriously. Does that answer
yeah.
the
I think everyone probably knows that the Ivy Leagues do not provide athletic related scholarships. So, but at the same time, what Carmen is talking about is if you are interested in the Ivy League and you're talking with the coach and they're interested in you, they can put you on like their recruited list, basically, which lets admissions know that they support you. They think that you would be a good fit for their team, their program. And that's just one more notch in your arsenal as the admissions program is looking at your total admissions package. So it's not a shoe-in, it's not a guarantee or an automatic, but it does oftentimes help. That said, depending on the Ivy, each Ivy has different numbers of people that they can support to their admissions office. And generally speaking, those are going to be pretty competitive candidates, not just athletically, but also academically. And they're going to do a pretty thorough vetting. So things like Holly's program, they probably would call Holly and say, hey, what kind of kid is this person? You know, are they a hard worker? Are they, you know, they're going to ask a lot of different questions. So the process is basically the same as anywhere else, but there's not going to be an athletic scholarship portion. What you're doing instead of that scholarship, the athletic scholarship portion is gaining help with admissions sometimes. And I think that's probably the wrong way to say it, because you know, you have to be admissible if you're going to be on that list in the first place. They are not taking anyone who doesn't already fulfill the standards of that university. The Ivy League has a pretty strict policy that no one can admit someone that's below the Ivy League standards without a really, really compelling reason. So just know that going into the process. And someone asked about the Ivy timeline. I would say that that is pretty early. So if you are interested in Ivy League, that's probably early decision is going to happen in the fall. And one of the things that we talk to our clients about a lot is making sure that if you are interested in a program, you've set yourself up in such a way that you can apply early decision or early action, whatever it is at that university. And in the Ivy League, that's something that's really good to take advantage of, because for most Ivies, their acceptance rates are so low. And they're a little bit higher if you apply early decision or early
significantly action. Higher. I just read some stats recently, and it's school to school, but you really want to set yourself up then to know what Ivy and really differentiate yourself, because the Ivy League is not going to be very excited if you're applying to all the Ivies. That looks like you're just shopping for a name. So you really want to set yourself apart and really want to have done the research as to why you're a good fit. We were in touch with someone who was looking at a couple schools that were really opposing. They might have the same major, but they really were not at all the same Ivy League school. And it really had escaped them that the profile of those two schools were in such stark contrast that that's going to be considered when they share that with that school. If they say, oh, I'm looking at, you know, Dartmouth and UPenn, those are very different schools. You know, you've got urban and rural, you've got, I mean, there's a litany of reasons. So that's something that we help you guys make your lists and try to help you figure out what your timeline really is. And is that really something you want to do? For some people, it's like Ivy or nothing. That's something we also try to help you guys do, is realize like, we got to talk you off the ledge, because it's not for everyone. And it's not the only way. It's not. For some kids mentally, and for parents, this is their mindset. And you really, sometimes if you look closer and you realize, wow, I had overlooked all these other opportunities. It's not always shiny sparkly that's going to be the best fit. And sometimes it's not going to be the best opportunity with rowing, And if you're going to spend time rowing, you really want to make sure that that's the team you want to be on, because it's really not that fun to be on a team that maybe they're really slow and they're getting beat up all the time, or maybe you never even get into, a boat because you're up against so much competition on your team. What you want to get out of it is going to be very important to analyze as well. And we can help you, really flesh that out a little more.
I think, I think it's worth emphasizing that certainly I know Holly is Ivy League and I'm Ivy League, but Carmen is not. And
may I just, I'm sorry, a little ADD right here. Hold that thought and say, I worked at Cornell University with Cal Berkeley, Penn, Princeton, Cornell, another Cornell.
Princeton, you said.
I said Princeton.
And
I
Cal.
had the same job at Cornell as all the rest of them, but I had a heck of a lot less debt. And
Yes.
I came into it from Rutgers, where I knew how to order the trash tags for my trash can. And my Princeton cohort spent about 3 months hoarding trash because he couldn't figure out how to get it delivered because he didn't live off campus. It wasn't something he was allowed to do. So, there are different fantastic things at different universities, and they don't always come at an Ivy League, admission standard, because that's a lot.
And to be honest, it's more about finding where you're going to be a good fit and be able to be successful. So for some things, the Ivy League might really and truly be the best option. But for some majors, you don't need to go to an Ivy League college. And there are some schools, I can think of a ton of Northeast colleges that are highly competitive. Some are even more competitive than the Ivy League to get into, and they're going to provide a fantastic education as well. So, we really stress to our clients to keep all of the information, just to be aware of all the different facets to this process. And instead of just focusing on one area or one thing, remember that there's a lot of different ways that you can succeed, and a lot of different areas that you need to consider as you're making that college decision. And the Ivy League is not for everyone, and that's okay. There are tons of really good schools out there to look at. And it's important to explore all those options. And if at the end you come up with, hey, this is exactly where I want to be and exactly what I want to do, and I'm a good fit, then fantastic. Make sure that you've done that research ahead of time so that you can put yourself in a good position to go early action then, or early decision, or start talking with the coach early enough so that they can get you on their list and support you to admissions, etc.
There's another question.
We have advice when athletes are talking to more than one coach at a time. That's a high general question that's come in, but I'm going to put a footnote on there, and I don't think she's on here, but I had kids from this season calling me talking about a coach giving them an ultimatum saying, I'll give you a spot if you come on this trip, but only if you do it before you leave this trip. And they didn't have the time to see the second school, which was maddening to me.
Sure.
But I'd love your advice for them when hear that.
Even when I was looking at job offers from opposing Ivy Leagues, I was put in that position. I had done really well as a coach. I was a hot, young, trending coach. And I was actually told by an Ivy League competitor that, well, they're not going to really mind if you gave them your verbal agreement that you were going to work there. Come see what we have to offer. I thought about that. I said, that's not a person I want to work for.
Yeah.
That was a done deal for me. It was a faster school that had more, chutzpah or something. That's not who I wanted to work for and be developed by. And that's not who I wanted to coach with or have leading young women. So these are things that if that's not for you, that kind of an ultimatum, that's okay. But on the flip side, this is a business for these people. So don't take that personally.
Yeah.
These people have to fill these recruiting spots, and they have the power, because if they have something that you want, they do have the power and the opportunity to do that. This is their job and livelihood. This is boat speed. So
I think also these coaches are looking out not just for you, but for their entire team. So they're trying to find the best people to complement their entire team. So they've got anywhere from, 50 to 80 athletes that they are responsible for. So while it is a business and it is best if, to not, that's our advice, is to not take this stuff personally and try to remember that it is their business. What Carmen is also saying is that take into consideration some of these things, because you want someone who is vested in I want someone who's vested in my best interest, and my best interest is to observe all the opportunities. So if the coach really wants me to be on their team, they may hold that spot for me and let me figure this all out. At the same time, if they have to fill that spot by a certain time, they may not be able to wait for you. And that's just kind of how the recruiting game goes. But, take that into consideration for sure. Do you want to be spending that much time over the next 4 years? Is that the character of the team? One of the things that we do talk with our clients about is what kind of character is important to you, what kind of feel is important to you, because that's, you're going to be spending a lot of time at the boathouse, no matter how you do it, and you're going to be spending a lot of time with the other people on the team. And so how that coach goes about getting those athletes onto the team is a factor that's going to be important. I saw another question that came up about talking about.
Yeah, do you have, I'll do it, Fran, for you, so you don't have to do that. So do you have specific advice as they're talking to multiple coaches? Like, I have told them all to communicate early, communicate pretty often, not like every day, but like once or every 10 days, especially if they're getting faster or have like things to report on, not just like, hey,
Yeah.
So, and I also stress that in my experience, if someone, and so I'm saying this for the parents' benefit who may not have heard me say this, if they're pretty serious about a school and they're like asked for their transcript, or like it's moving in the direction where it looks like it's mutually interested, to communicate that you feel strongly that they're in your like top 3.
Yeah,
so that it still
you really
like strong interest without like I'm all in for you. Because if they go see a second school and accidentally do love a different one, then it looks like a bait switch, right? So
coaches understand that. They also know that you are students and that they are kids, right? They do understand where you're coming from, and they want you to be very communicative on that. Like, you should say, I've got 5 visits lined up, or I only have 3 visits. You're in my top 3, and tell them why, what the strengths are of these other programs. These coaches do talk. They are going to know. You're not going to slip one over anybody. You really want to make sure that you're operating in your own best self, right? You want to be true to yourself, and just letting them know where they stand is fine. The bait and switch, coaches do get their hearts broken, so to speak, if they lose a student, but they also understand that, and just letting them know where you are in the process. Hey, you've fallen out of the running. That's okay. That's it. Very important. You need to communicate those things. That's an update that they need to know.
That, because then they don't have to spend time on you anymore, and that helps them out a lot. Like, honestly, there were so many kids who were worried about hurting our feelings, and it would have been so much better had they just said, hey, you're like still in my top 8, but you're not in my top 3 anymore, right? Like, that tells us, okay, we don't have to call you every week. We can call you once a month, every other week, something like that, just to keep things fresh. But if we're not in your top running, then we as coaches wanted to know that. I think at Reach, Carmen and I have a pretty formulaic response to how to contact coaches. So Carmen came up with a formula actually way back when, and we do kind of guide you through when you should be contacting coaches, how often.
The content.
We recommend for sure that you practice ahead of time. We recommend that you think of things that you should tell them that they need to know, or things that will help them understand your character and personality, so that they can determine how you'll fit into their program and their community. And we also recommend that you have a spreadsheet, which we provide for our clients, but we recommend that you have a spreadsheet to keep it all straight. Because it can be extremely confusing, especially when you throw into the mix emailing and text messaging and all that other stuff. So we certainly recommend having kind of quick notes about the schools that you're interested in so that you can reference, because after a while, you know, if you're talking to 5 to 10 different colleges, sometimes the exact specifics get caught up in your brain and it's easy to get confused. Who's who?
Yeah,
what's
taking
what.
notes.
So notes are really important, and just organizing all that information. So again, that's something that we help our clients do, but being organized really does help that process a lot. So yeah, that's, I think.
There was a question about Cox.
Yeah, but I was just gonna say pretty similar for coxswains, like, you know, any advice?
coxswains I think I was very poignant and blunt when I said you're going to have a hard time as a coach justifying, 8 blue chip coxswains and no rowers, right? So you also have to be realistic and set your expectations realistically with the coach's need and versus your want, right? You want them to want you, but at the same time, they have a very specific niches to fill. But the coxswains should definitely think about how they're presenting themselves and the information that they're giving and making sure it's useful. As Holly said, some kind of interesting, useful update. Really, when Fran and I talk about packaging yourself, we're talking about how much contact have you had outside of the rowing office with campus? How much do you actually know about that school? Those are things that you can tell that coach, which also conveys this person actually really wants to be here. This person isn't going to transfer. This person wants to be on the rowing team. Those things are going to be really great ways to present yourself over the series of different emails so that they realize you're not just one-dimensional looking for a seat or a scholarship. They know that, oh, that person actually knows the professor because they've had a relationship there. Or, wow, that person did research in high school on something that is also being pursued here at the university. That makes you stand out on paper as a person, not just as a number, not just as a coxswain weight and height and an SAT. So there's a lot that a coxswain can do to present themselves as the person that they want to be perceived as. So as same as the rower.
Yeah. And I think with coxing, a lot of times it is more about presenting yourself as someone who has done a lot of research, who is organized, who really does want to be part of that university, because as a coxswain, in some ways, you do kind of have to make it pretty easy for that coach to just, oh, okay, this person's going to get right onto our team and fit in, and they're a good fit for our team, our college, our community. Awesome. It's easy. So as a coxswain specifically, you want to be doing that research as early as possible so that you can really build that relationship and make it easy for the coaches of teams that you're interested in to want you, basically, because you don't have those easy stats like rowers, for example.
And do you guys have thoughts about, like, I have encouraged them to ask, like, as you're talking, if they're responding to me and you're talking, you can just ask, like, do I look like I would be a good fit for your team? Like, try to gauge there. So someone's asking, how do you know if they have space for you? And it's not really in their position, unless you're a coxswain. For my parents, you're not being recruited for like a seat. You're being recruited to bring speed. And you're either a coxswain or a rower. It's not even which side. They're just going to switch. They're going to reteach you how to row anyway. So it doesn't matter. So do you have thoughts, you guys, about that?
Yeah, we absolutely do. And we recommend to our clients that they ask those difficult questions. Where do I fit into your program? Where do you see me in 2 years, 3 years as a senior? How do you feel like I contribute to your team? You need to ask those questions, because if you're pursuing the heck out of one college and they're basically full and, they have 10 kids going 20 seconds faster than you, and they're not going to take you, you're just wasting your time. You need to either decide, hey, I really want to go to this college and it doesn't matter if I get a scholarship, or, it doesn't matter if I row at all. I'm willing to take that risk to go to this college, or I need to find someplace else where I'm going to find that good fit, where I'm a fit athletically, where I'm a fit academically, etc. So yeah, you need to ask the coaches those questions for sure.
We definitely advise people on, warming up that relationship.
Yes.
You want to warm that up first, because that's not your first question. Like, hey, what can you give me? And that's something that becomes, that is a big part of what we do, is helping them become adults and pace themselves and learn to manage expectations and, how to present yourself professionally. and the timing and of the nuances of timing and things like that. So asking that question, once you know that that's something that you want to know out of them, because that means that they're your top 3 or something, you're like, hey, I really think I want this place. And then also preparing yourself emotionally before you ask that question. What do I want the answer to be? And is that going to change my decision whether or not I go there anyway? Because
Exactly.
no coach, not a single coach is going, I mean, all right, maybe, but very few are going to say, oh, that person comes and they work so hard and they give it their all and they always have a great attitude. Forget them. They're not on my team. Like, that's probably not going to happen 99.9% of the time. So know that you're probably going to be a welcome contributor no matter where you go, as long as you do have all those attributes.
That said, it's good to know that information, because if you're expecting to walk on and make the varsity 8 by the time you're a sophomore, and you know your height, size, potential speed isn't commensurate with that, or isn't comparable to the rest of the team, and you wind up being on that team and maybe never, I'm thinking like at Cornell there were several people who were on the team for 3 to 4 years, never raced a race.
Yep.
Now, those people were extremely happy to come down to the boathouse. They erged every day. They were hard workers. They were always cheerful. They brought a lot to the team, but it wasn't boat speed. And that's important to know. And that's important to try and figure out before you get to the school. If that's what you want, you just want to be part of the team, then awesome. If you want to be in that varsity 8 competing at NCAAs, those are 2 different things. So it's good to talk to the coach about where they see you and where they see your potential growth. But as Carmen said, after you've developed a relationship with them, maybe not like first conversation right out. So again, that's where, like our formulaic approach to how to contact coaches goes over some of this stuff. Like, what's the first conversation like? What's your second conversation going to be like? Third conversation, etc.
I think also that speaks to, Holly had met with us previously a few months ago and looked at kind of our shtick or our spiel, if you will, just kind of we have a PowerPoint that we do. And on it, she questioned, we have a question that says, should you row in college? And our answer is absolutely. I mean, you absolutely should row in college because it's so much fun. But it's okay to row in college and erg every day, but you have to be okay with that. So what we help you do is kind of realize, like, are you comfortable with your position on that team and what that coach has said? And if that's not going to be okay, there is a fit for you somewhere else. There's so many schools with so much amazing rowing, from club all the way to the fastest in the country. But if you're thinking you want to make that varsity 8, as Fran alluded to, and you're looking at Cal, but you're, maybe you're heightily challenged, you're going to be on the erg team.
Short.
Say that again. Carmen and I, yeah. All
of us are short.
Holly, Fran, and I are all 5'6".
Yeah, and we understand that height does not dictate, your the total sum of your contribution to the sport of rowing. But there are some places where that might work out a little bit better than others. So
for sure, and that's awesome.
And they ask me about that, parents too. Like, I've had some conversations with college coaches and about some people who, are really fast on the erg, or some people who aren't as fast. And like, I will tell them about all of those things, right? Like, there could be someone who has like the best attitude. And I'm like, yeah, this person's not very big and they pull a 730, but you want, like, culturally, you want this kid on your team. Like, I will tell them that.
Yeah.
And I told the athletes in the beginning, coaches are going to call us and they're going to ask us about all these other things. They're not just going to ask me to send a spreadsheet. They're going to ask me to like give anecdotes and stories about those kids.
Because the, height and erg score are the 2 things that everybody focuses on when they're approaching, college recruitment, but it's not the be all. Neither of those things are the be all end all. They're looking for a total package. So things like your personality, whether you work hard, whether you're showing up with a good attitude, whether you're all, whether you show up with a lousy attitude, but you're always on the trailer loading boats when it's time to load boats, or you're staying after sweeping, goose poop off the dock, like those things are important. So, it's not a be all end all. And I think also what Carmen had alluded to is that there are so many colleges that have rowing and so many good colleges that have rowing. You can find a good experience somewhere. Sometimes you have to hunt a little bit for it, but you can find a good experience if you're willing to, sometimes if you're willing to explore many different opportunities. So I think that's certainly that's definitely how we approach all of this.
Someone's asking about if you send an email and you get radio silence, what do you do?
Send another one. I mean, you
Yeah.
might want to time it, but sometimes that's an indicator that that coach isn't interested, or you're not maybe what they're looking for. And it's probably, height, weight, erg, SAT, GPA. Sometimes it means that they've got a million emails and they just, they missed it. I had said in an earlier presentation, coaches can be horrible administrators. They don't go into coaching because they
For
really
sure.
love organizing and prioritizing. They're not all that great at it. And it's not the fun part, frankly. If they could just have every year the class kind of fill itself, year after year after year, it is a lot of legwork. It's a lot of emotion for them to vet out. And that's why we really encourage you to do that research and to package yourself and be organized and stuff like that, because that radio silence could mean everything. It could mean
Absolutely
nothing. Some of you guys aren't aware of the timelines that go on with the NCAA, or like the dead periods and things like that, or realizing there were restrictions with COVID. And then you were really encouraged because oh, okay, now they're talking to me. If you do it well, the ball is in your court and you're making the decision. So whether that radio silence may not matter, if you kind of know where you want to be anyway. That's really what we hope to get for you.
Yeah. And if you've done your research and you have picked a program that you're like, well, hey, I fit in really well academically, I fit in, it seems like this would be a good community, and the coach hasn't gotten back to you, as Carmen said, try them again in another week or two. And also think about what's going on in the coaches world, because if you're contacting them like in April, May, that's a terrible time to be contacting coaches because they are so busy.
You have to do it still. You still have to do it, but you might not get what you want out of it. But if you are getting your agenda advanced, that's okay.
Right. But realize that they may not get right back to you, and that's okay. For, as Carmen said, some coaches, that means that maybe they're not super interested. But for some coaches, again, it could just be that they were busy. And, continue to contact them and continue to show them different aspects of your character, of your personality, that will help them get to know you a little bit better. So you can carry on if it's a college you really want, you can carry on a one-sided conversation until they get back to you, because your persistence may show them, hey, we had 25 people that we thought we were going to recruit this year. Here's this 26th person that's been contacting us every 2 weeks regularly to let us know what's going on. 15 of our 25 have fallen out of the running. And then there you are to clean up, so don't, as Carmen said earlier, try not to take it personally. Remember, there's a lot going on. And that if it's something that you really want, if you've done your research and you think this is where I'm going to be super happy, then continue to work on that, coach, and see if that's going to be a good fit for you athletically as well.
I can't tell you what a windfall it is when you've got a bunch of novices that you've recruited off campus and you've got a ton of experienced kids that maybe aren't varsity caliber yet. It's so awesome to fill in with those people because it makes it such a fun experience for everyone. The people that maybe aren't varsity caliber and they're a windfall to that coach, the kid applied on their own, they got in on their own, they show up, they get all the emails, they're like, hey, just include me. You are going to be included then on, the team meal stuff or the team, bonding stuff, like all the stuff that kind of happens as it warms up. You'll be part of that, even if you weren't necessarily that top blue chip or that scholarship athlete. The coach might not have the capacity at that time to communicate with you, but if you matriculate, because that's where you want to go anyway, and you say, hey, coach, I'm still here. When's the first day? they're gonna have time at that point for someone to help tell you what's going on.
And honestly,
Hopefully,
that happened to me when I was applying to college. I went and visited Cornell and I spoke to the coaches, and then all of a sudden there was radio silence. Well, it turns out that they had been replaced. There was a new coach when I showed up in the fall, and I was at the swim test, which Cornell has, and the new coach said to me, "Hey, do you want to join the rowing team?" And I was like, "Well, I already talked to the rowing team." And they were like, "Oh, well, I'm the new coach, so welcome." So you keep, if that's where you really want to go, that was where I really wanted to go. So I figured I would walk on when I got there, and know that that's always an opportunity. As Carmen said, very few coaches are going to turn you away from the boathouse if you're willing to come there and work.
I have, this is a little bit different, but I had a parent ask me a personal question about something specific, but I'd like to make a general comment because I think it'd be helpful for the other parents. In my experience, and Carmen and Fran, this is an opening for you to say you're wrong, Holly. Cultures, there's like high level culture, right? Like Dave O'Neill sets a very clear culture, whether it's at Cal or Texas. It's like very clear. I think he's excellent at it. And there are different coaches that are better at it, obviously. But then there's like a more micro culture that's usually a function of the people on the team. And so it sort of swings for like 4, maybe 6 year times. And I see this with disgruntledness or even like questioning of authority. Like there's something usually that makes a mistrust. And so it sort of peters and spreads among the team, and you wait till you graduate those people out. I've seen it with disordered eating things that happen where there's like 5 or 6 people, it sort of spreads among that team, and you wait till those people graduate out. How do you guys have any thoughts on how to find out what that is if they're like serious about a school? My suggestion has been try to get someone who's younger on the team, because they'll be older when you're there. And see if you can, on an official, what I did was get them alone and ask them. I always ask, if you had a magic wand, what would you change about the team right now? Because you're basically asking them like, what's wrong with it, without being like, tell me the dirt, what's like makes them uncomfortable. Do you have any other ideas of like how they can find out that info?
I think it can be hard, because those students have been trained to try to facilitate the recruitment. They're supposed to put on a shiny, sparkly face, and, telling your family's dirty skeletons can be challenging for a kid who
Honestly,
wants to
like
say,
the kids that are doing the recruiting, that are hosting the recruits, generally those are the ones that have bought into the team. So it feels good for them. So that can be a challenge.
But I would say today, because of texting and Instagram, you have such a different level of understanding and communicating with these kids that if you are persistent, you can maybe tap into some of those vibes. I think you become friendly with these people. And parents, I would caution you to make sure those are appropriate relationships, right? Because they are still high school students. But watching the Instagrams of those people, and what are they doing? What do they look like? What are they posting about in their personal pages? And visiting on your own, but also then continuing that relationship, or, official visits or even unofficial visits, getting to know those kids a little bit. Because even as a recruiter, we had some strange stuff that ended up happening with one student. You wouldn't have known it. She definitely didn't feel very supported, I think, at school at the time. But after having left that program, you're like, that was what ended up happening with that student. You don't necessarily want to tap into that as a newcomer. So there is stuff that's going to happen that you cannot control. But if you can try to gather that information at first, yes, that's very helpful. But things are going to happen because that's life. And I would say be the element of change in that team with your class year, so that it stops with you. I mean, that's a big part of why we actively recruited some of the kids that we did. Great attitudes, strength in their self, because we knew that we were starting to embark on the next level of that team, and we needed people not always to be the fastest, but to be the right kind of person. And that's where
so much of recruiting is not just based on those numbers, but it's based on who you are and based on what that coach is looking for. So, I alluded to the coaching staff was let go between the time that I was recruited as a senior and the time that I arrived on campus in the fall, and the classes ahead of us had not been very successful. They had a really rocky relationship between the men, heavyweight, lightweight, and women. It was pretty contentious. And the freshman class across the board came in and was like, nope, this isn't the team that we want to be a part of. We're not doing it. We were great friends. We got along really well. It was a fantastic 4-year experience. Had I spent more time on the team as a junior senior, that probably would not have been the take that I left with. So while that's an important consideration, remember that you also will have an impact. But again, asking the coach some of those questions and asking the people that you're hopefully visiting with, doing real intensive research before you commit to someplace for 4 years is really important. Does that answer the question, Holly?
I think so. I also tell them to go look at the alumni network. Like,
For sure.
if people didn't have a positive experience, they will not have a robust rowing alumni network. And if they do, they did.
Yes.
So that's always interesting.
Carmen.
Some of
Carmen's
that
always
can be
talking about the alumni.
some of that can be a function of where rowing ranks in the athletics department, because a lot of that alumni stuff is cultivated by the infrastructure that's already there. And so a lot of times rowing programs fall victim to it because rowers are usually not your top producing, basketball salary guys. So sometimes they get neglected. So yes, we have said that just from a personal standpoint of where do you want to see yourself? Is that the alumni network you want to be able to utilize when you graduate? If it's not robust, is that coach utilizing those opportunities and giving them to the rowers? And if not, is there somewhere else that could really produce better for you? Because you want a job.
Yeah, and that is one consideration, and one thing that we've counseled our clients on too is, hey, is that coach really trying to build a rowing community at that college, or are they just like, hey, you show up, you come down to the boathouse and you work out a little bit? If that's what you want out of rowing, then that's great. If you're looking to use rowing as a place to really form a community and to really be part of a community, part of that is the alumni. Because you can use those, the alumni network in the future for sure, but it also does say a little bit of something about what the current coach or whoever's in charge of that program, the administration, etc., how they're approaching that program. Are they trying to build a program that meshes into the fabric of a community and is then going to in turn have you meshed into that fabric so that you can be successful, or is that not? And does that matter to you? So
the other thing, just quick, that I have suggested before is try to talk to someone from each of the different tiers of the squad. So like someone in the 2V and someone in the 4, and someone in the 3V8.
Sure.
And if you've got someone in the 3V8 who's super gung ho, that's a good sign.
Yeah,
because usually those are going to be the first people that are going to tell you all the things that are wrong.
For sure.
100%.
For sure. And I think that also falls into you figuring out where you fit on that team, because if the coach is like, hey, you're a little bit smaller and not quite as fast as most of the kids on the team, but we like your work ethic and we think you could be a good contributor, they may be saying something like, hey, you're probably going to be rowing in the 3V for a lot of the time. And it's good to know, hey, those people are going to be as committed to just going hard and going fast as I am. That's important to know.
Yeah.
But discern.
We did talk about that a little bit. I've told them, your guys' kids, I've said, or your girls, young women, I have said, there will be programs where if you stepped on, you could be contributing immediately to the 1V. Sure. And then there are programs that you might contribute to the 1V your senior year. Are you okay with that?
Right.
Right. Because if you're not, that changes things pretty tremendously.
And for, it's interesting for Carmen and I, because as we've gotten older, our perspective in some ways on rowing has changed. And when Carmen and I were athletes ourselves, when we were young coaches, we were very much focused on, hey, you need to win NCAAs. This is our goal. That's what we're out there to do. We're competing at the highest level. We want to have the fastest boat we can possibly put together. And as we've gotten older, we've realized that there are other ways to look at rowing as well. We now look at it as like, hey, it's great for some people who want to go and compete for NCAAs and the varsity 8. That's fantastic. For some other people, it's a better fit for them to develop mastery of the sport, for them to develop leadership skills, for them to develop self-confidence, for health reasons, for just being part of a community. There's so many different ways that rowing in college can contribute to your life, that just sheer boat speed or results is just one part of that, but it's important for you to think about what you want out of that college experience so that you can match yourself up with a program that's going to be able to give you that.
Awesome. I don't see any other questions. You guys, it's been really helpful. Last call. Does anyone have any last minute questions? I know some people are in the car.
Well, if people want to contact us, if something strikes you later, definitely reach out to Holly or reach out to us, and we are happy to see what we can do for you.
Yeah, Carmen or Fran, drop your email into the chat for everyone so they have that. That will not be in the recording, so I'll just read it out, Fran, as you're typing it.
It's reach at RowersReach.
Okay,
that's
reach at RowersReach.com.
Yep.
So thank you for doing this. Reach out to these guys. I'm sure they'll be happy to chat with you specifically about your daughter. Some of you asked me about training stuff. I'm on it. We're doing some real estate work over here, my husband. So I'm like a little drowning, but now my kids are in school, at least until it gets shut down.
I know.
So I should have a little more
crossed.
time.
Fingers crossed it will all work out and be good to go.
And hopefully I'll see some of you guys maybe masked at Head of the Charles. So thanks, Carmen and Fran. I appreciate it. I will send this recording out.
Have a great night, everyone.
Have a good night. Bye.